All right, Rahul, thanks for jumping on today. I'm excited to get to know you a little bit better. For myself and people listening, can you give me just a short background on how you started the project that you're now working on, and then where you see the, say, short, medium-term trajectory of what you're building?
Sure. Well, I'm a long-time gaming entrepreneur. I've had multiple gaming companies that have, been acquired or, have turned out to be, knock on wood, like decent successes, I guess you could say. So I've been a gamer since like before you were born, kind of thing, right? So forever, my entire life, it's been gaming, and I got into blockchain pretty early. Like I was kind of a Bitcoin skeptic in 2012. Then I started taking it seriously in 2013, and then I really went deep into into it in 2014. Started a esports betting company that became the largest esports betting company in the world, and just got acquired in last year by one of the largest gambling companies in the world, Entain.
Is it Unikrn?
Yeah, it was Unikrn. Yeah. And along the way, I got deeper into blockchain. We made investments in we were the first investor in this play to earn game called Zed Run, which is horse racing on the blockchain. And I started Irreverent Labs with a partner who I used to work with at Microsoft. We both started Microsoft Ventures together, and this is before Unikrn. And we worked together for a few years. He's one of the smartest people I've known, and he left Microsoft after I left to get into the venture space and make investments. And then I met up with him after Unikrn sold, and he just wanted to know what I was working on. And I told him about this really dumb idea I had for a video game, and the rest is history. We started Irreverent Labs, and we started building this game, and it's just a crazy concept for a game. It's called MechaFightClub, or MFC, and it's we've been having a ball building it. So yeah.
What was the pitch? I mean, when you first caught up with him and was like, "Hey, I want to build Irreverent Labs and MFC."
Yeah. Irreverent.
That's why I said. I think that's what I said.
Yeah, I don't know. Some people say irrelevant, so it sounded like it. I don't know. Maybe I was. But what was the pitch? Well, it started off with David was back at Microsoft actually, and he was running the AI team at Microsoft Cyber Defense. So he had a group of like machine learning experts whose job it was to build machine learning applications to identify and thwart nation-state attacks against the United States government before they happen. So he was doing very serious work and using all machine learning and all AI, just brilliant stuff. And he told me about this piece of software that he built outside of Microsoft that he called Supermodel. It was a really interesting piece of software. They were potentially looking for a CEO for it. And I loved it. I love what they were doing, but I felt it was, when I dug deeper into it, I just thought that there's a better application for that type of work. And so I said, listen, I got a really dumb idea that you may or may not like. You may never want to have coffee again with me after I tell it to you, or you may love it. And I shared with him this idea of the game, and how we sort of discussed how we could apply AI to it, because he just knows so many people in this field. And that's kind of how it started. Like I shared with him the story. He laughed the entire time. Anybody I kind of tell the story to, they sort of laugh, and it just started out that way. So that's how we got it going. And what makes this game unique, it's basically a fighting game based in the future, where every character in the game is an artificially intelligent NPC, or a non-player character, living on the blockchain as an NFT. That's kind of how it starts, and then it gets much deeper than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what of that, when you describe that, would you call it like a framework or a structure to the game? Where do you view the what the levers are? When you have a NFT character on the blockchain, what does that allow you to do that a normal game wouldn't, per se?
Sure. Could we pause for 1 second?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
I want to ask you. You're getting super grainy. Do you notice that with me,
really?
or is that just me on you? Yeah, massively. Like, I don't know if you see me clear. If you see me clear, it's fine. But it's just kind of. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
If it's
Visually, no. Sometimes if it goes. We'll just power through it, because sometimes it'll look that way. If your internet starts to slow down, it'll prioritize audio, and then afterwards it'll look much better.
Okay, because it's kind of been like that for quite a while. Let me just make sure everything else is shut down on my end, just to see. I apologize.
No, all good.
Okay, yeah. I don't know. I don't think it's my internet, but in any case, it's fine. Let's keep it going then. If you're okay with it,
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Do you want to? Should I start again with that question?
We're just gonna roll through. We're just rolling.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, oh, really? We're just rolling. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah. All good.
All right.
So, where I was really curious is like, if you're creating a game, and obviously the blockchain enables you to do a lot on payments, and NFTs specifically, when you think of a multiplayer game like this, what does the blockchain enable you to do from the user's perspective? Like, how would I immediately know that this is a game built on blockchain?
Well, so you shouldn't know that, right? Like, you shouldn't, technically, it shouldn't be about the technology. It should be about the game, which is kind of a fail for most of the projects in this space. It's very complex to build on blockchain in the first place, and secondly, to learn how to onboard onto some of these games, you have to almost be a crypto god, right? And it shouldn't be like that. But your question should probably be, why blockchain, right? Like, why on earth would you build a game on blockchain in the first place? And a wrong answer would be because it's a hot space and everyone is getting into it. That would be a terrible answer, right? The reason for us is pretty simple. It's really about ownership. Like, I've been playing games my entire life. I play League of Legends all the time, right? And I don't know if you've ever played that game, but basically there's a bunch of champions that you pick from. You buy skins in the game, and they're stuck with your account. You can't sell them or trade them or anything. And you really have no emotional connection with any of the characters in the game. Like, you may like playing Teemo Jungle or Fiddlesticks or Master Yi or whoever it is, but you don't own those characters, and you have no sort of say or input into the development of that character. So with blockchain, if it's done properly, basically the idea that you can own your character is one thing. The fact that every character in this game is unique, so they have a unique name, they have unique traits, they have bionics, unique abilities, and they have a unique personality. The fact that it's all built with machine learning and these are all unique characters is just the beginning, because now you own that character and you start to get an emotional bond with that character. Like, the way we're building this game is pretty interesting. It's sort of like a series of mini games. We're not building a monolithic game, right? Like, we're not building a game that has, like a ton of features and depth right from the drop, right? What we're building is a series of mini games that have a lot of depth, and the common elements between those games is the lore. So there's like a really deep storytelling and lore in the game. The characters carry across all the different sort of mini games, and the economy. And when I say the economy, the game has an economy built into it where, people who play the game, they earn as they play. The birds earn as they play, or the characters in this game, they earn as they play. And you can use what they earn in various ways in the game. Or, if you decide to take it out of the game, you can do that as well. So I mean, it's really a nuance, but a lot of gamers have this allergic reaction to NFTs and, why do we need blockchain and that sort of thing. It's sort of like a very visceral reaction that a lot of core gamers have. But at the same time, there's a lot of sort of these new Web3 gamers, if you will, that are getting into this space that really see kind of the future of where things could go. And there's a bit of crossover between them. So for us, there's a massive reason why we're building on blockchain.
Yeah. It seems almost subtle, but the subtlety is I think a perception. So when you play a game, you're very much within the walls of the game. I mean, you're in that universe. Like you said, you can't take skins out. You can't move anything out of the game and own it digitally. But as I think of why build on blockchain for gaming, it's because of exactly this application. It's you can create multiple games in one sort of bigger universe. Being able to move assets through that just wouldn't be possible, right? It has to be maintained on some database. So unless there's one mega company who has a database of all the skins, all the assets inside of all the characters, you can't, which makes sense, right? You can't move between World of Warcraft and, League of Legends, or if they're not owned by the same, well, I guess maybe they're, but yeah, your point makes sense.
No, but listen, what you're talking about is interoperability between games, right? And I hear a lot of people talk about that's the holy grail in gaming, where you can take your sword from League of Legends into, Counter-Strike. And it's not. That's like the dumbest, notion of what NFT gaming should be. And it comes from people that don't understand gaming. They never played a game in their life, right? They don't, and I'm not talking about you in particular. I'm talking about generally that idea is ridiculous, right? If I'm a game publisher, or I'm a gamer, they're just going to laugh and say like, "Fuck that! I don't want to do that." Right?
Yeah. Well,
so where it actually gets super interesting is when you take those common elements that matter on blockchain and carry them across to either a series, like in our case, we're doing a series of mini games, but we can also take our characters into other decentralized worlds. So maybe we're not going into World of Warcraft with our characters, but we might go to Decentraland, for example. We might buy a piece of land there. We might, have fights inside of Decentraland, that sort of thing. To give you some more like depth of the game is a fighting game based in the future where aliens landed on Earth in the year 2060, roughly. And they came to Earth because they felt that Earthlings were ready to share technology with planets across the galaxy, right? So they're like, oh, these guys are definitely ready. So they come to Earth, they land on Earth, and they left a week later because they realized we're just a bunch of idiots and we're not ready to share the technology. But when they left behind 41,000 eggs, right? And no one knows what to do with these eggs. And there's seriously like this amazing lore that we've built, and it's like chapter by chapter. It kind of goes back and forth. People are sort of putting it together. But the idea is that, these eggs start to hatch, and these evil corporations figured out that what hatches from these eggs are these like mechabot, these bionic roosters and hens that they use to enslave the human population with, right? They're called mechabots, and they're basically there to kill humans. And the evil corporations are using them to sort of control the human population. And then by the year 2140, there's this uprising, a resistance, if you will. And there's this group of hackers that figured out you can reprogram the eggs so that instead of having them fight humans, they fight each other in these hilarious, cruelty-free mecha cockfighting games in the Coctagon, right? And so we start out by liberating Las Vegas, and in the year 2140. So the skyline is like different because it is the year 2140, but it's not wildly different. You still see the big wheel, you still see the MGM Grand, but in the middle of it, you see this giant Coctagon that's like beautiful, and it's got like screens all around it. There's art. There's think of it like a rave almost, where there's we're bringing in creators and artists and musicians to sort of participate in this world. But what you have is you're having these cockfights in the middle of Las Vegas in the year 2140. And that's sort of like the premise of what we're building. And, our goal is to build a emotional attachment between the characters and their birds, sort of like a Tamagotchi on crack.
Mm. Yeah. What about this? Did you write the storyline, or tell me about the storyline process development?
Yeah, so my son and I actually scripted this game. My youngest son, by the way, is 19. We sort of scripted this game over the last year, and then when we brought together the team with David, we brought in the best living artist that I know from Las Vegas. His name is Gear Duran. We put together this amazing machine learning team, people that David or I have worked with in the past. We brought on a team that's building on Unity, because we're building this game like it's a beautiful 3D game. So we put together a Unity team, which a majority of them happen to be based in Ukraine. So it's been kind of like it's brought a challenge in the last couple of weeks, and how things are going with them and that sort of thing. That's a whole different story we could talk about. And then we brought in some really, really great computer scientists from Microsoft, like computer engineers from Microsoft, to help us with our blockchain and with our machine learning part. And the story is being written by our chief storyteller, who used to work for me at Unikrn, my last company. So again, like, these are all people that have worked with us in the past. And this guy used to do like PR and communications for me personally, but he's also this like crazy gamer / writer. So he's having a ball because he's now not only writing, like chapters of like lore, but he's also helping to design the game. It's just like a dream job for him.
Yeah. How much, say, for somebody who is in that position of writing storylines for games, obviously there's a lot of parallels between science fiction writing and just writing in general. What's the difference there? Do you view it as exactly the same, or how does a science fiction writer cross over into the world of game storyline writing? Like, what are the things that make storylines for games distinguished from just general stories?
It's such a great question, actually. I had a meeting yesterday with this major Hollywood producer who asked me, "Who's your writer?" Like, and he asked me, like, who is he? As in, is it, like, he assumed that this person was someone famous, right? Whether it's male, female, it assumes it's like, is it this person or this person, like name dropping? I said, no. This is like a nobody you've never heard of who's just a fantastic writer. And the idea for a game writer versus, say, as somebody who writes like science fiction novels, there's not a lot of difference other than the fact that you have to do it in bite-sized chunks, and you have to be able to sort of like present it in a way that that can apply to what would appeal to a gamer. And in our case, we go back to what we're trying to build, which is a hilarious, cruelty-free mecha cockfighting game based in the future. We want people to laugh and enjoy this type of entertainment. It's a game where the characters are all artificially intelligent. They have their own personalities, and we're building so much like depth into the actual characters of the game. When you read the story, you want to be able to identify with the characters. And it's sort of like in bite-sized chunks. It sort of jumps around. So it's not like a monolithic novel, if you will, but in the end, it will be a novel, right? Because it'll be, you'll put together all the chapters, you'll reorganize them in chronological order, and then you've got your novel. Or maybe not even reorganize them, because right now it's all random, but it tells you, exactly how many years before the hatchening, or how many years before the Las Vegas liberation, or that sort of thing. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, setting it in the relatively near future makes it feel, and especially when you start off with aliens come to Earth for our technology, it certainly feels like it is a potentially real scenario, and I think that's what makes it particularly interesting, because you can say.
Even more so, by the way, I'm sorry for interrupting you, because on that point, we start out in the year 2060, but we're also talking about current time as well. We're talking about like the Satoshi Nakamoto and the creator of Bitcoin, and we talk about all that. Like we started in like 1978 even. There's some characters that are from 78 and then sort of going on to their like the future and what that looks like. It's pretty neat. Like you can jump around in this timeline and create this just really rich story in the end.
Yeah, it's cool. I find that these great stories, when I think of like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and others, they have a almost mythological structure to them, where they have whether it's the Joseph Campbell's hero story arc to the adventure, the guy has this dragon out there, either metaphorically or literally, that is a monster or a boss, and they have to go out and fight him. They resist the call, but then eventually they go for it, and then they're on the edge, and that is almost like, it's like human nature to want that. I almost feel like it's hard coded in us to have that adventure, have the struggle. Like, I love the humor aspect of it. There's certainly flavors for just dead serious shooting, but the humor and the non-cruelty, which I take it to mean like you're not seeing heads blown off. You're more or less just, killed, stunned.
It's more like we don't want them to look like real roosters and hens. They actually look like robots. Like they look like they're bionic. what's interesting is when we created the AI, you've got to meet my partner one day, and he can explain it to you in ways that will just blow your mind, because it kind of sounds absurd the way we're doing it. But we have we're using AI in a few different ways. We're using it number one in creating the personalities of, no, sorry, not the personalities, the way the birds fight in the ring. It's kind of like it's like agent simulation AI, and it allows you, with agent simulation, you can basically simulate the moves that the birds may use in a fight, how they fight, how they avoid falling out of the ring, that sort of thing. The problem with it is that you don't really get a personality in the bird. So we actually used like real chicken DNA. We used like 2 chromosomes from a specific type of chicken and reconstructed it to create a personality for the birds. And it's not like we did experiments on chickens, but this is actual data that's available, publicly available data, from the Gallus chicken that was somewhere in the U.S. government, they actually took this chicken and they did some like experiments with the DNA and that sort of thing. So we took that data and we basically used it as a way to create personalities in the birds, so they have a unique personality. And then the other way we use AI in the game is...
Can I pause you there? Because I'm not sure I got you.
Yeah.
So you have this DNA, which is effectively a long text file of 4 different proteins, right? Then what do you do from there? You turn that into a personality type?
We took 2 chromosomes from this bird, essentially, and we deconstructed it and you are using machine learning. We're creating personality for the birds. So every bird should have somewhat of a unique personality depending on the amount of human interaction that they get. So over time, these birds kind of develop more, and you learn more about the birds, because in this game, your job as a player is not to control the birds, right? It's sort of like if going back to the idea of a non-player character. Do you know what a non-player character is in a video game? I mean, I'm assuming that most people on this podcast may not, but
well, probably good. I'm not a big gamer, so I've heard it, but I don't know what it is.
Okay, let me explain. So, do you ever play Grand Theft Auto?
Yeah, I love that game, actually.
Okay. So the people that you beat up with a baseball bat and you steal their car, and then they get up and they walk around like nothing happened? That's a non-player character. Now, imagine if those characters were actually artificially intelligent, right? And they actually were smart and they fought back, or they picked up the baseball bat and beat the shit out of you, for example, right? A good movie to watch is with Ryan Reynolds. It just came out. It's called Free Guy. It's on HBO Max, and it is an incredible movie. Ryan Reynolds plays he plays a non-player character in a video game, and he doesn't realize it. It's brilliant.
Wow, that's trippy.
That's a great idea. I would highly recommend you watch it. It is such a good movie. I've seen it like 4 times now. It is so good.
Have you ever seen the Instagram accounts of people walking like non-player characters, where they're just like, especially in Grand Theft Auto?
They do the motions from like Grand Theft Auto. Yeah. I have, and so. So we've used AI in 3 different ways. So in the first 2 ways I mentioned. So one is how they fight. 2 is their personalities, using this the DNA from this the Gallus chicken, and then the last way we're using machine learning is basically, or just like even really great software engineering, I guess you could say, is to automate the pipeline of the game creation. So what I mean by that is artists and musicians are probably the most important part. The creators are the most important part of the game, right? Like creating the art, creating the characters. That's super important, and that requires a real human to do that. Somebody who is an actual artist who loves this stuff and can create it and make it just absolutely beautiful. But taking that art and then putting it down a pipeline where you then take it and you create it into a game-ready asset is mind-numbing. And it's a process that artists hate. They don't want to do that. They just want to create. So we're automating that process using code to get it to a game-ready asset. So, and the reason we're doing that is because these characters sell as NFTs to start. So when you buy the NFT, you want like a beautiful, piece of art that has motion. It's got AI. It's animated. It's really fucking cool, right? And you want to be able to take that now and put it in the octagon to fight. And artists don't want to be doing that mind-numbing work to make it into a game-ready asset. So we're using machine learning to be able to do that.
That sounds like a huge undertaking. And you mentioned that it's just kind of like a side project. That sounds like something you could spin off and it could be its own, $50 billion company.
Well, right. So that's a good point. So we're building. So Irreverent Labs is a deep technology company in the guise of an entertainment company. Using like a mecha cockfighting game based in the future as a Trojan horse to develop this tech, right? So we're building this really sophisticated AI technology. We're building this automated pipeline from creating beautiful art to turning into game-ready asset, and we're kind of taking that technology, and at some point in time, we want to be able to sell that or license it to other companies or make it available or that sort of thing. So yeah, you're hitting it on the head. This is why, we don't call ourselves MechaFightClub, even though MechaFightClub is everything that we do. We call ourselves Irreverent Labs because the games that we're creating or the entertainment experiences that we're creating are meant to be hilarious and you're meant to laugh and not take us seriously. Because if you think about the humor in this game, we're talking about a game where you've got cocks and hens, that are robots that are fighting in the Coctagon. And those are the professional fights. The amateur fights happen in the cockpit. And every few months we have this big Royal Rumble event called the Apocalypse, right? And when these birds hatch from these eggs, by the way, they're all individually unique, beautiful eggs. I'm not talking about the eggs that you buy from Safeway, right? And it's not a...
Well, this better be, right? This is alien eggs, so I'd expect nothing less.
Right. So they're beautiful eggs. They're all unique. And what happens is everybody. So we're going to liberate Las Vegas, and when we liberate Las Vegas, we discover 6,969 eggs of the 41,000, and we release those to the public. So people are going to buy those eggs, right? And those eggs come with something called a provenance card, which is like a trading card that shows the entire history of that egg and what hatches and its professional fighting history, its amateur fighting history, its traits, that sort of thing. And then after all the eggs are sold, there's a countdown that starts. It's a countdown to the hatching. And when they hatch, you get to see your bird. And the birds are unique, right? Like 40% of them are female, so 40% are hens. Hens are smarter than males. They all have bionics. So all the birds have 5 different bionics on them, which range in different materials. They have different colors. Some of the colors are super ultra rare. Like there's one color called Centurion Black. It's the most beautiful black color that you've seen, right? And and then they pick their name out of a hat. So we've shown a few of the example birds. We have this one bird who's Centurion Black, and his name is BBC. And then we have another bird. His name is Hen and M. We've got Oprah Henfrey. We have like these kind of like ridiculous names. We have this one female, this hen. Her name is Honeypot, and she's got this wild personality. She's sort of like she's out there now, kind of it's exploring social media in different ways. We have another hen. Her name is Tessa, the Cybercluck, and she looks like a Cybertruck essentially, and she's obsessed with Elon Musk. So it's like we're building personas around these birds, and we're also building if you will, we're letting the community run with the humor of cocks versus hens. The breeding game in itself is hilarious. If because we're going to allow breeding one day, where if you got cocks and hens, you can breed them, and whatever the offspring is the offspring. But the game of breeding with these things is like hilarious.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's why we call ourselves Irreverent Labs. We don't want people to take us seriously because cancel culture is too wild out there.
Yeah. Totally. Good. And that's the wild card. Like that's the way you can just be ultra creative, is if you're in the bucket of comedy. Like if you're in the bucket of like serious, then bullets are coming. Yeah. Every PC and every political frame is going to be held up. I love the similarity in terms of breeding and everything else with the horses in Unikrn. It feels like very similar dynamics to having that animal character. You're like valuing it, you can trade it, you can enhance it, you can breed it. You said 40% are female, 60% are males. Is that true of chickens? Is that
No, that's just how we picked it in the game. I don't actually know what the truth is with chickens. I know there's like lots of different types of chickens. That the Gallus one that we picked is just like one of like maybe 40 different species or so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of species. But I would say that, we picked 40% for a reason. Our thinking was that, so, we were worried about this game because it is cockfighting. I told you about the humor, the fact that you got a chicken named, BBC could be offensive to some people, that sort of thing. So, but we want women to play the game, and we want them to understand that, hens are cherished, right? Hens are 40% of the population. You need hens to breed. Hens are way smarter than roosters. So people are going to want to buy hens. And so, that was part of the thinking, to be a little bit more inclusive. But it's hard to be inclusive in a game, in the gaming industry, which is very like sort of male dominated and almost, the people in the community are toxic and that sort of thing. So the way to be inclusive in this case is to make the characters important and to make people, whether they're male or female, get emotionally attached to their characters in a way that they're having fun while doing it. The other thing that's interesting story, when David and I were talking to VCs, we originally weren't planning on raising money, but we went to A16Z just to kind of show them what we were building and to get an idea of what they were looking for the future when we do want to raise. And the person who runs the A16Z crypto, her name is Ariana Simpson, and she's like, first of all, she's brilliant. She does tons of deals for A16Z, and she has women on her team. And there was only 3 women in the room during the pitch thing, and it was just me and David. And we're thinking like, holy shit, what are we going to say? Like, we're building a cockfighting game in the cockpit and the coctagon and the apocalypse, like, and we just said, we just got to embrace it. We got to be who we are and tell the truth and say, this is what we're doing. What do you think? And I mean, 8 minutes into the presentation, Ariana's writing her notes, and she wasn't smiling or anything, but she was writing notes feverishly and listening. And then as soon as we said, here's the hen, and we showed a picture of the first hens, she looked up, she said, that's really cool, and she started laughing. Then everybody in the room started laughing, and then it was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be 6,969 individually designed hens that turn into, like, obviously 3D. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the first drop is 6,969 eggs. And out of the 41,000, right? And those eggs will hatch, and roughly 40% of those eggs you can assume will be hens.
And your guys are designing every one, obviously, right? Everyone is unique.
Yeah. So the way it works is there's, I'm going to guess there's like 50 different color palettes, or maybe 55 different color palettes, right? And, they range from like common colors, like pure white is a very common color. I think it's like 27% of the population is pure white. And then the most rarest colors, there's like Lambo yellow and, Beast of the Green Hell. And like, there's like different colors. And the rarest color is, our materials, are like alien materials. So the colors basically range from like common to sort of like rare colors. And then there's exotic materials. And the exotic materials are the most rare exotic material is Satoshi Sapphire. And it's an alien material. It's named after Satoshi Nakamoto, and there's stuff in the lore as to why. But Satoshi Sapphire is the most rare material. Then it's like Doge Diamond. Then it's like Gold Standard. And there's different ones that you can get. And then every bird has 5 bionics. And the bionics are basically the things that sort of help them in various parts of the battle. They all have bionics. But like if your bionic is made out of plastic, it's going to be less effective as, say, one that's made out of Satoshi Sapphire. And a bionic is an example is like the beak is a bionic, the claws are bionics, the comb or the wattle, depending on if it's a male or female. And then they all have a reactor on their chest like Tony Stark. And the reactor is for like endurance as an example, right? So if I have a Centurion black bird that's just beautiful and a super rare color, but it's got like a plastic, reactor, and you have a pure white bird who, let's say his name is Sean White, and he's got a carbon fiber reactor, that there's a good chance that your bird will last longer in fights, even though the color is different, because the color has nothing to do with how well it's going to fight in the ring.
And obviously, if you breed those together, you'll have like a Supertronic bionic.
Well, you'll have something, and we haven't talked about breeding yet because I've learned over the years about breeding in these games and what it can do to overpopulation, and it can really create some other challenges in the economy. And so we believe we've solved this. We have a totally different idea in mind with breeding, but I can tell you that you'll want to keep the offspring.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to just want to go.
Do you have a one cock policy?
Well, you have to have one cock and one hen for sure to breed. You can't obviously breed with the same sex. But as far as like a one cock policy, no, you can own as many cocks as you want. It's fine. Yeah.
It's funny when you write the story. Do you? Does it just roll?
Giggle?
Oh yeah, I'm sure of that.
It does, yeah. Yeah, like I mean, we have this one game where it's like an AR game where you can take your phone, you can go into a bar and you can basically pull your cock out and have a cockfight in the middle of a bar using AR, right? And it's just like it's so funny when you think about how absurd this game is and the humor that goes into just the creation of these fights. We had a meeting a few weeks ago where the machine learning guys were talking about some of the automations that they're building. You know how I told you about the automation of the pipeline, and one of the automations is in creating eggs, and how many eggs per hour we're creating, and then what that translates to into how many birds per hour. So he was talking about, his name is Rashid, and he was talking about how many eggs per hour we're at. And he says, well, so we're about 180 eggs per hour right now. You're talking about the compute and all the stuff that we're doing on the cloud. And this equates to about 25 cocks per hour. And he said this with a straight face. And, I'm kind of laughing, and I just paused and I said, hey, Rashid, can I ask you a question? 3 months ago, when you were working at, the Microsoft cyber defense team, could you ever imagine that you would be working on how many cocks per hour? And he just paused. He started laughing. He said, no, there's zero chance in hell I ever could have imagined I'd be doing this compared to what he was doing before. But it's pretty amazing. Like they have a lot of fun doing what they're doing. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's really fun. And most of the guys are in Ukraine that are doing the design work?
No. Actually, no. Our lead artist is here in Las Vegas. He's somebody I've worked with in the past. So he's our creative director. He does all the designs, like all the top tier designs. My previous creative director at Unikrn is here in Seattle. So he does like our web stuff and our UI and that sort of thing. All our machine learning and blockchain people are here in Seattle. The guys in Ukraine, guys and gals in Ukraine, are working on the Unity part of the game. So they're helping us with the sort of the game part of it. So we give them the assets. They're helping us with models. They're helping us create sort of the Unity animations and that sort of thing.
And the piece that you're building in-house that turns the design into the 3D model, when you think of the deep tech, that seems really hard technically. Is that something that you think is obvious to go towards the licensing model and giving it away or charging other companies to build? Or do you think of it, or is it still a decision that you're thinking about whether it becomes like Pixar, where you just say, we're going to build the technology in-house and we're going to use it with our own story writers and continue to make awesome games?
I'm a lot more open-minded that way. Like I don't think of IP as something you should just keep yourself and make it as a competitive edge. I think of it as a way to, if you create really great IP, you should find ways to share that IP with others who are equally passionate about what you're doing, and to help create better experiences. So I really think what we're building is groundbreaking. There is no game like it out there where every character is artificially intelligent. No one's ever done this before. It's very hard. But I think once we do it, I think we're going to crack a whole new era of entertainment. So I would love to find ways to share that technology in the future. Yeah,
I agree. And I'm kind of surprised. I guess it really comes down to how many other organizations would be able to utilize that technology. Like I'm picturing Pixar, when they built what they built, maybe, 10, 15 years ago, when they were really kind of the first company building this animation studio. I'm sure they had this conversation internally. Hey, should we allow other people to use this technology? I think ultimately they didn't do that, right? They don't allow other people to.
It's a culture thing back then. Like Steve Jobs was never one to share anything. To be honest, and I know that because I've had a history in the PC space, and we were building gaming PCs. Were like the first company to start building those things, and we ended up getting acquired by HP. But along the way, I'd actually met Steve Jobs, and just after we got acquired by HP, like I'd met him a few times, and like this one time. He came to an event. It was called All Things Digital back in, oh God, I'm trying to remember the year. Maybe it was like 2009 or 7 or something like that. 2007. It was All Things Digital. And it was like this big event where there was Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. They went on stage and they spoke. And it was just a fascinating talk. And then he came out afterwards and he walked by the HP Voodoo area. And I asked him, he was looking at the systems that we were just building. We just launched this new PC called Blackbird, and it was out of this world. And I asked him, hey, would you ever consider, licensing your OS? And he says, no, that'll never happen, ever. And he was kind of a dick about it. But, that's like how it was. Like that was, back then, Microsoft, Apple, all these companies would protect their IP. And nowadays, Elon Musk generates lots of IP, but he only does it for defensive purposes. He does it so that he doesn't get sued. And then he open sources it to other companies, right? Like, who does that? And he does it because he knows that he's 10 years ahead of every other car company, right? In terms of the software that they're building and their AI and all of that stuff. They're like at least 5 years ahead of the fastest growing, company in that space. So, the idea of licensing, licensing IP versus protecting it is it's just better.
Yeah.
Because then you can actually improve it. Overall better. You get feedback from people. I'd like to do this, or I'd like to improve it this way, or that sort of thing. And to me, that's actually really cool.
Yeah, it seems kind of like the Microsoft versus Google approach, where it's open source versus closed source, like .NET being closed source, and what am I? I'm trying to picture open source.
You think Android?
Android, yeah,
yeah, sort of. Like they're both. They're both kind of equally guilty from the past. I mean, Microsoft's definitely gotten a lot better with open source these days. They embrace Linux, and same with Google. They both are. Like the Chromium, browser, that sort of thing. It's all open source, and they've definitely started to embrace open source because they get, by making it open source, you tend to get more people, more developers, more brains creating something, and it's just better because then it's not like you get out of this not invented here culture, and you can innovate faster, arguably with open source.
I think of it as really depending on what is being open sourced. If it's a technology layer it's like a layer 1 concept, not layer 1 blockchain per se, but it could be an operating system or, in the case of layer 1 blockchain, but it's something that is not going to be used by people. It is a deep technical layer that's possibly even interacting with the hardware. Then it just makes more sense to open source it because it's not going to be productized in and of itself. Whereas I think of it as the higher you go up the chain of software, the closer you get to the actual user using the thing. Like in the case of Tesla, I'm touching this car, but what they open sourced was the technology that allowed them to create the AI from the cameras to the machine learning. Like that's the layer 1 technology piece that certainly facilitated the car in my hands or on the ground. But I also kind of understand what the line is, why companies wouldn't want to open source like the blueprints or all their code, or they're
right.
It seems to be
you can't share you can't share the design, for example, or there's stuff in there that you don't want to share. Maybe it's even like the battery differentiator, right? Like what makes their battery so much better than Porsche, for example, right? Like stuff like that is tough. But, I think Elon Musk is a different kind of guy. Like he's way past the point where he cares about that, protectionism, and he's more about making the world a better place and, climate change and that sort of thing. So I think for him, it makes sense because his goal is to change the climate.
Yeah.
So he wants more companies to embrace this shit, right? It's too bad that the U.S. government doesn't see it. I mean, if they did, they'd at least mention the word Tesla.
Yeah,
once
no,
in a
I know,
while,
it's crazy.
It's weird. It's weird.
It's weird. That's really weird.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't know. I think it's because he's just not. He's not in the mainstream. He's not a subscriber. He's very much he's not afraid to just go against the grain. Like, hey, some politician
he's not lobbying anybody.
Not
That's true.
lobbying anybody.
He actually fought lobbyists. He fought lobbyists for years. You know, so yeah, I think he's a fascinating.
I think he also knows everything you said is true, right? He wants the world to be interplanetary and sustainably, energy production, transportation. But I think he also knows that by having that be the mission, that the mission is not about making money or even selling a product to make money. It's beyond that. He knows, and by open sourcing everything, you're attracting people you're attracting the best people, and the best people are not just slightly better than good people. They're like 10 times better. Like the law of distributed talent and distributed anything. And then I think the other thing is you attract people to perform at their highest level because you're calling out a mission that's so beyond just material, right? Like when you look at most mission statements, it's like, we want to make, the fastest widget or the cheapest this. And it's like, the fact that his mission is critical to the survival of our species. Like if you can say that, you're going to get the best people, and you're going to get everyone to be really hardworking. No bullshit. And I think that's the thing.
No, I agree. I agree. I do think it's weird though, because I completely align with what you're saying. You look at what's happening in Ukraine, and Elon Musk sending out like satellite communications and that sort of thing, just on his own dime, on his own jets, his own technology, just to help the people. Yet there's so many people. It's weird. I don't know what it is, but whether it's a left wing, right wing thing or whatever, that are so against him for whatever reason, like he's an evil guy or something. And I guess they don't pay attention to the news, or they don't know what's going on. Like, I don't understand that. So like a guy who's doing so much to make the world a better place gets so much shit from people for like the dumbest things. Yeah. It's weird.
My thought on this is that, I mean, this is a very big picture framing of it, and I very much could be wrong, but I do believe that in today's world, in the West in particular, we don't have like the religious structures that we had, Catholicism, Christianity. They have largely been dropped. Like people now between the ages of, under 40, most people, religious rates are declining. They're not going to churches. There's no higher level into which they subscribe. This is where I think the replacement comes in, where it's like, I now worship the ideas that are being put forth in politics, and the woke ideologies are, certainly a major prominent one, but there's other kind of like smaller ideologies that go in line with what's right and what's wrong. That's ultimately what it boils down to: what's right and what's wrong. What should we do with our own lives and with other people's lives? And I think that is what he's not subscribing to. And when you get people who are like not just not willing to subscribe to your higher level ideas, we'll call it, but they're like, hey, this higher level idea is it's BS, then people get mad. They get mad. They're saying, hey, I don't, and he's not willing to subscribe to that. He's an independent thinker. Yeah. And he's quite prominent. I mean, he also talks publicly, like Jeff Bezos, Tim Cook. There's a lot of people who are in similar corporate positions who just don't speak publicly in long form. Right. They might give snippets here and there, or like talk business, but they don't talk about deep topics. Yeah. No, that's true. That's a good point. I don't know. Yeah. That's my take. I mean, he's got nothing to lose. He can do whatever he wants. Yeah. But no, you're right. You're right. Yeah. Do you follow the? I mean, I want to ask you about these folks you have in Ukraine. You talked about it a little bit. Do you see the current situation? Obviously, it's majorly disruptive, I'm sure, for them and everyone there, and a tragedy that's happening. Do you have any take other than sort of my understanding of it is Putin is the aggressor, Ukraine's defending themselves, and just there's a lot of chaos. It seems to be that's the state we're in. Yeah. It is, we have meetings with them almost every day now. There was a few days where we couldn't speak with them at all because there's people moving from Kiev to Lviv. But they
they're such a neat team. Like, they're very optimistic. They tell us stories about what's happening in the war and that sort of thing. They're struggling. Like, there's people there. Like, one of our guys just got to Lviv like a couple days ago, and he was coughing incessantly on the meeting we had. And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Yeah, I spent like 3 days in bunkers, like basically dirty, dusty bunkers with crowds of people. He definitely probably has COVID." One girl came with her 6-year-old son, by themselves, going from the east to the west, and they still want to work. I mean, their concern was like delivering, and they don't want to lose their jobs, and they want to help the Ukraine economy, and they don't want to leave the country because they want to fight for their country. I mean, there's so much happening right now that I don't think they fully. I don't think they fully kind of know what to expect, I guess, right? And I'll say it, like, I don't, like, Putin's a bad guy. Like, he's just a bad guy. Like, there's no justification for what he's doing. People talk about how, they were going to join the UN or this and that, or sorry, the NATO or, this and that. And it's like, yeah, it just doesn't compute. It doesn't add up to the level of, that he's taken this to. And so I'm worried, man.
Yeah.
Like, I worry about a nuclear war potentially, or the exact opposite has to happen, which means, whatever Lindsey Graham was talking about, basically something like that, right? Like, he has to, like, Putin has to go. He can't be in power anymore. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you, man. I can just say, I'm heartbroken for these people. We're still working with them. We care a lot about our team there, and and they're just like determined to get through this. So we're determined to work with them and get through it together.
Yeah, I think this concept of good versus evil and the evil inside of everybody is a fascinating concept. I especially find it interesting how gaming can become a really relevant thing in the world, like for this, for like in the real world, gaming, which is not, it's figurative, it's illustrative, but it tells a lot of the stories that we use. It's like the same reason why when I watch a Disney movie or Lion King, I'm interpreting a lot of the archetypal stories that play out in the real world. And like when you say he's evil, well, how many characterizations of the evil boss or the evil character in movies have there been, or games? And I view games as especially relevant today because we're connected to each other through games, as opposed to movies, which is just a one-way street. You're just watching what they're providing. Games, you're interacting with other people. You're interacting with other people across the world, and you're interacting with people across the world real time, and you can communicate with them through the stories that people like you have created. And so it's almost like if there's nothing like it. Twitter is probably the closest thing, but even then, it's always it's just literal. It's just character text, maybe some voice, but there's no archetype to it. It's just like a giant room where you throw 10,000 people and everyone's talking at once. Like games there's a storyline,
Yeah, there's a storyline. There's a community. What's amazing is, we're building community. We announced this game a month ago, and we've got, 18 or 19,000 people now in our Discord. All legit, real people. No, we put every anti-bot measure in there. We didn't ask people to invite their friends randomly. Like, these are people that are communicating. And what's crazy is we have a big population of Russians and Ukrainians in this community. Wow. And we have these language channels that are separated, right? And like a couple of weeks ago, they were talking to each other and they're all friends. And now it's like the Ukrainians are talking less and less at the moment because they're in fucking trouble. And the Russians who are in this channel, and you got to go see our Discord and just look, they're all like basically pro Ukraine.
Wow.
They're like they don't believe in the war. So these are young people who are getting real information online, right? And then there's older people who are getting complete misinformation, who really believe they're fighting Nazis. Like it is so fucking crazy. I can't even explain it. And I can tell you now that as far as I know, Russia has cut off Facebook and Twitter now, and they're going to get to the bottom of all this stuff. They're going to cut it all off. And so we put out a note yesterday to both communities. Dear MFC Russia, like we told them, like we gave them basically, you guys, at some point you may get cut off from all communication. Want to let you know that we appreciate you while you're here. We're all praying for, the people of Ukraine. We hope you'll join us in doing that. And we sent a similar note to the people in Ukraine, except it was much different tone. It was more like, listen, when you're like, we know that you're struggling to stay in communication and be here, and we're all praying for you. And we hope you get through this in the most optimistic way, sort of saying, we'll be here, when this is over. It's so messed up that we have to think that way, right? Because you're right. Gaming is about getting people together, and I would invite you to go to our Discord and just take a look to see how wild this actually is. It's playing out in real time.
Yeah,
it's nuts. And so, and by the way, there's people in the community that are doing art. The shit that they're creating is unreal. Like, go to our Twitter and just see some of the stuff that we're retweeting. This one person created a bird, so took one of our birds and created a Ukraine version of the bird with the Ukraine colors, and wrote a really, really nice note about we're praying for Ukraine, they'll rise from the ashes or something like this. Just unbelievable stuff, right? So I shared it with our team, and we had a meeting the other day, and one of the girls on the team, the lead PM, used that as her background. And then I asked her if I could take that picture and share it. So I shared it with more people. Their company shared it, and now they're using it like all over the place, this image, because it's inspired them, because they love working on this game. It makes them happy. Like, out of all the shit that's going on in their life, the fact that they get to work on this game that makes them happy is what's keeping us going.
It's awesome.
It's so wild.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, I think the reaction to separate as soon as there's a fighting going on, I certainly understand why we do that as people. You're effectively saying, bad, don't do that, and therefore I'm not going to engage with you. But the downside is that if people can't talk to each other, then the stories start to separate. And when the stories separate, they quite easily go, you're the bad guy, and they point to the other side. Yeah. And they both think that the other side is the bad guy with the same level of vigor and conviction. And that's where I think if it's Starlink, if it's Discord,
it's not happening.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, surprisingly, it's not happening. Like, there are some people at the beginning that were like, we shouldn't talk about this, stay neutral, like Switzerland or whatever. But at the end of the day, no, you got to do what's right, and you got to say what you believe. And it feels like that's just not happening. People in Russia are actually saying to the people, the Ukrainians on the community, we're very sorry for our country. We're embarrassed about Putin. Like, it's bad, right? I mean, we had a naming contest, by the way, 3 weeks ago for naming the birds, because, the birds come on, they pick their name. One of the names that was picked was Vladimir Putin Cage. This was before the whole thing happened. And all the Russians were laughing about it. Like, we love his name, and we're gonna create Vladimir Putin Cage, and we're gonna do some really funny sort of Russian art around him and stuff. And then the war started, and it's like, whoa, this is completely messed up. We're living in a in a simulation. It's crazy, man.
Yeah, it really is.
What a nice discussion we've had today, Mike. I appreciate it, man. Like, I didn't think we'd end up going this far, but I can tell you that my team in Ukraine will really appreciate this.
Yeah. No, kudos to you guys. I think you're approaching the moderation of the communication in a way that's really productive and engaging and integrative, because it's people like you and hopefully people listening that are in similar positions that have this decision to make, which is, hey, you may be feeling pressure to exclude, like Adidas and Nike and all these brands saying we're shutting off everything from the Russian people. But you have to think what's right for the community that I have. And if you have a true community, you have the most valuable thing, which is you have the ability to allow people to connect and talk to each other. And when real people talk to each other, it allows empathy to be deployed. And I think that's what dissolves the anger that's necessary for real physical violence.
I am so aligned with that, and that is exactly why I believe they're cutting off internet in Russia.
Yeah.
Right, because they don't want that empathy. They want to send the misinformation to the people. And like I said, I even have a friend, really good friend, who's actually moving here from London tomorrow. She was born in Seattle, but she moved to St. Petersburg. She lived there her entire life. and she's she's Russian, and she recently moved to London a couple years ago when she got married, and now they're moving to Seattle. Anyways, I had a conversation with her the other day, and she's heartbroken. She was telling me that, like, she's basically giving me all the reasons why this war is wrong and why Putin is bad and this and that, and she's Russian, and she's put it out on her social media. And I said, "Are you going to go home and see your mom or anything?" She said, I can't go back to my country because, if you speak out against this war, you get up to 20 years in prison.
Wow.
Right? And she's doing it on her social media and stuff. So she goes, I cannot believe that I have to envision a day where I cannot go home to the country I love. Right? It's amazing.
Yeah. Well,
it's so fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Man. Like, I don't know what can happen tonight, but like, as soon as this is done, I'm going upstairs. I'm going to put the news on and just see what happens.
Yeah.
It's just...
Doesn't make you...
so crazy,
for all the
dude.
shit we have going on in the U.S., it just makes me appreciate we got one thing right. And that was like rule 1, freedom of speech. You don't have to agree with me, but you have to respect my ability to articulate the views that I have that are in disagreement with you. And like that, there's a reason that was like number 1, right? It's like, whatever was going on in the 1600s, they realized if you can't talk, what do? You fight. And we don't like fighting. So, yeah.
No, exactly. I have to say one other thing too, like about that. Like I'm a left-leaning, socially liberal, fiscally conservative person, right? But I lean left on social issues. But like I started to really spend a lot of time on 2A, like Second Amendment, and really understanding it and why. Of course, there's extremes on both sides, right? And there's ways to solve like mass shootings and stuff that doesn't involve taking away everyone's firearms, which will never happen in the U.S. There's ways to do it, but neither side is working on those ways. They're just not. They're going one extreme one way or one extreme the other, and it's terrible. But when you look at what happened in Ukraine, they're handing out rifles to people who've never used them before, right? And they're giving them like a quick lesson on firearm safety. Now go defend your country, and that to me is crazy, right? Like to me, at least in the U.S., obviously majority of people have firearms. They do. Democrats don't like to talk about it. They'll pretend they don't, and Republicans love to talk about it. They'll tell you all about their guns, but it just makes you think about the Second Amendment in a different way.
Totally.
Totally. Like a ground war in the U.S. Not that Canada or Mexico would ever come, and kill us, but you never know.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe Justin Trudeau loses his mind, or maybe World War II happens, or somebody comes in through Hawaii or Seattle or whatever. We don't know anymore, right? So anyway,
yeah, you have a lot of. I think that's a major reason why the U.S. has never been physically invaded. Is that other countries know that there's more guns than people, and I don't think that there's certainly negative trade-offs you pay for that, right? We have more shootings, we have more murders on the streets and more school shootings. But to not acknowledge the positive aspects, which really is, even in our lifetimes, right now that's happening in Ukraine, but it has happened here in the U.S. and it's happened in other places not that long ago where governments act terribly. And it's not to say that it's intentional. It's just the way that human beings are. We are right. We chip away. Right. Corruption is like a slow moving tumor that just grows, and if it grows unchecked, then it kills the host. And I think the threat of having the ability to protect yourself is enough to slow that. That's kind of how I think about it.
There is a way to stop to all but stop mass shootings, though. It's through the use of technology in a very serious way, in a bipartisan way that neither side has looked at. They just haven't. The extreme right says no, I don't want to. I don't want any background checks, and the extreme left says we should limit how many bullets you can have in a magazine. Like they're so dumb on both sides. It's like you can't. There is a way to stop this, and it requires technology. And if it wasn't for MFC and Irreverent Labs, that's something I would have gone and tackled. But it's just such a soul-sucking issue that I just decided I want to have fun this time.
What's the solution? Or how do you see it?
So look, it involves so right now when you, and it's a series of things, but right now when you buy a firearm, you go through a background check, right? Typically you'd go through a background check. Not always. In some states, I know there's stories of 18-year-olds buying handguns and you're not supposed to, but they can. But you go through a background check, and every firearm you buy, you go through a background check. The problem is these background checks get discarded. And they aren't actually keeping like a database, a centralized database, like a registry of gun owners and what guns they have and the serial numbers and that sort of thing. The reason they're not doing that is because people on the extreme right say, I don't want my name on a registry because when the government is a tyrannical government, they'll come to my house and take my guns. If you have a tyrannical government, I promise you they're going to go and take everybody's. They're going to go to everyone's house and murder you regardless, right? Like, they don't give a shit. They're not going to say, oh, this guy has 10 guns. Let's go to this guy's house. That's not what's going to happen. They're going to go to everybody's house. So number one is you have to have a registry, and you have to be willing to be on that registry. At the end of the day, if you're buying a crazy ass, like, Sig Sauer or whatever, like, P320 with 17 rounds and this and that. Like, you should be on a registry, just like when you buy a car, you get on a registry. That's one part. The second part is, let's say you own 20 guns and you bought, like 3 more this month. And they say, oh, shit, this Mike Townsend guy has 30 guns in his house now. And he's buying a lot of ammunition. He's actually loading up on a ton of ammunition right now. That's okay, right? But let's just look at the social media or the stuff that he's doing online. Holy shit, this guy is talking about like shooting up a school or doing something crazy on Reddit, or like he's really talking a bunch of nonsense. We really need to look at this as a potential hotspot. So it's essentially using data. And, unfortunately, this is a thing that people hate when I talk about it, because it is one of those things that you have to do. But it's using data and machine learning to understand and identify a threat before it happens. And that can be done in a way that is that doesn't just randomly get people in trouble, but it can identify a threat before it happens, and it can stop a school shooting before it happens. But it requires public-private partnership with companies like a Microsoft and a Google and that sort of thing to make it happen.
Yeah, I see how that can be really effective. And I can see that the pushback is being there's just more control and more power that the more centralized organization. But it seems like a worthy trade. I mean, I think about a solution is like, we should seriously deploy a big fund, both financially and a serious heart towards the psychological disposition that someone is in when they're in that state. And like, you could take away the guns, but that doesn't take away the suicides. It doesn't take away the pain that's still there. And I think that's a major thing too.
Sure. The mental health part is part of it, but it's not the cause of somebody going out and randomly, indiscriminately killing people just like that. Like, it is definitely they're mentally, like screwed up for sure. But the fact that they're able to get those guns legally, mostly, right? And the fact that they're able to do it with undetected, basically, with no kind of real kind of like, consequences or eyes on that person or that sort of thing is just wild. Right? The fact that I can go out and get a concealed carry permit in Washington State without a gun safety course is insanity. Like, I could, and by the way, it takes like 2 weeks to get one, 2 weeks to a month at the most. But I can just fill out a piece of paper, send it in to the chief of police, and I get my concealed carry permit. I can now carry a handgun, and I have no idea how to use it. Right? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, right? I don't know the 4 rules of gun safety. Like, that kind of shit is not normal. And in any other place in the world, it wouldn't be normal. Yeah. Like, unless it was like a place full of, all kinds of like anarchy or whatever. But in any case, this is like a whole other subject. Yeah. But it's an important.
It is an important one. Yeah, I appreciate you going down this road and just expressing your thoughts on this, because nobody knows what the answer is, and all of us have. It seems like a lot of us have given this some thought, but I think that the more you articulate the ideas, the more you get feedback from other people, the closer we get to a good answer and not fall into any pit holes, where it's like we make a mistake collectively. So congrats on everything you're working on, man. I'll let you run. It's a Friday afternoon here, so I appreciate your time. I love what you're working on. I love the spin on humor. I love the deep technical base that you guys are building, and certainly that Discord group sounds like a really powerful platform you have. So hope to have you back on someday, my man.
I appreciate that. Yeah, man. Like, when this is done, I'll share it with our community. And, if anyone's interested in learning more about MechaFightClub, they can go to MechaFightClub.com. They can find us on Twitter. They can find me on Twitter at Rahul Sood. And, we're having a lot of fun building it. So if you're interested in playing it, let us know.
Yeah, and you're looking at a spring 2022?
Yeah, around. We were supposed to do it at the end of this month. The war is a bit of a setback. We're probably we're still very capable of doing the drop, but we want to make sure that the game is ready before we drop these NFTs. We don't want to be like these other projects where they promise a game and it takes a year. So for us, we're probably like, sometime this spring, like April-ish, I think is probably when we'll do it.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Keep kicking ass. Taking names.
Thanks.
All right,
Appreciate it.
Rahul.
All right. We'll see ya.